Welcome to Orbicle Times Podcast, and hello to everyone, whatever part of the globe you're from or happen to reside in. My name is Kelly Jo, and here we'll provide armchair conversations gathered from interviews and research reviews to explore the seen, the unseen, and the in-between of the supernatural paranormal phenomena, with topics that circle around spirit orbs, NDEs, OBEs, UFOs, time slips, mystical moments, higher consciousness, and more. I hope that this cast will be our meeting place and judge-free zone where we can explore, learn, and grow through the telling of. This cast will be launched on a monthly basis or a bi-weekly schedule whenever I'm able to make contact with those in the know for their telling of. Speaking of those in the know and the telling of, have you had mystical moments or other supernatural paranormal experiences? Care to share on this cast? Then consider stepping into the light with your telling of, or send in your monologue for me to read on this podcast. Simply email orbicletimespodcast@gmail.com for a chance to contribute to this cast.
So I pulled out my phone because I didn't have a watch. I pulled out my phone from my coat to check the time. And I know it was 10 or 11 minutes past 4 a.m. And I go to come into the house to go to bed. This is where it was life-changing. I come into the front door, close it, turn around, close it, lock it, turn around, go upstairs. And as I put my foot on that footstep, I was struck with a very powerful, clear, concise instruction, which was instantly recognizable as that it was a telepathic instruction.
In this episode of Orbicle Times, Mr. Max E. McCabe is back for part 2 of his telling of his 2014 UFO encounters, which circles around bright flashes of light to bright orbs in the night sky, followed by his first of 3 consecutive UFO sightings. In Max's own words, nothing about this was normal anyways. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Good, that's good.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Are you guys surviving the heat wave there?
Yeah, it's not nice because the houses are not built for this kind of weather. It's carpeted floors, no aircon. They're just brick sweat boxes. And thank you, Kelly Jo. I appreciate you asking me back on.
I'm so happy that you came back on for part 2, Max. Thank you.
Well, what happened? Go back to the tail end of 2014. It was the last couple of days of September or the first couple of days of October. I wish I had kept a diary. Which seems crazy that I didn't note the date down. I mean, even I can't believe I didn't do that. But who was our neighbor's daughter? We live in a terraced house, by the way, a row of houses next door to each other, just brick walls dividing them. So my daughter was outside the front of the house one night with our neighbor's daughter. They were the same age. I think she was 17 at the time. And so when it all began, one night, my daughter was out the front of the house with her daughter, Tanya's daughter, from next door. They were both about 16, 17. I was asleep. I know it was about 11:30 in the evening when this happened. She told me the next day that they'd watched these balls of light. They were outside and they'd seen some balls of light, self-luminous balls of light, not very high in the sky at all, that were very unusual, making formations, making triangular formations. I remember her specifically saying triangular shapes, and then disappear. I think she said a couple shot off and 1 or 2 blinked out, but more than 3, but at least 3. She told me the next day, she said she didn't want to wake me up. She wanted to come and tell me, but she didn't want to wake me up. So I just thought, wow, sounds interesting. Wondered what they were. Of course, had no idea. And I think I'd looked online to see if there was any news or anything like that about what that could have been. Didn't find anything. So it was the next night. I'd been up late working on a website, really, really early hours of the morning, and I was tired. It was time to go to bed. So I went out to the back garden to smoke a cigarette. As I was sitting on a chair, just taking in how beautiful the night sky was, because it was so crystal clear. It was one of those nights where there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. no upper clouds or haze. It was just crystal clear, sharp blackness and bright, beautiful stars. And so I was sitting there just admiring how beautiful it was. And it was at that moment that there was a double flash in quick succession of brilliant, pure white light that lit up the section of sky. And so when it lit up the sky, immediately I thought it must be lightning. Of course, you just think it must be lightning. What else could it be? So just as I was thinking it must be lightning, I realized, hold on, there's absolutely no clouds. There's no humidity. It was freezing cold. I remember how cold it was. I had my coat on over my t-shirt. And so I thought, hold on, it can't be lightning. And then I look up because there was another double flash of pure white light. I mean, it literally did seem like it lit up the whole sky. It was so bright. And so I looked straight up above, and that's where these two balls of white light, just as my daughter had described from the night before, the way that they looked, just self-luminous balls of light, were traveling side by side, close together, not high. I mean, it's difficult, I understand, of course, to tell distance at nighttime lights. You could tell that these were maybe 80, 100 feet up. These were not thousands of feet. These were not up in the atmosphere. These were, let's say, large, extra large beach balls at 80 to 100 feet. So they were sizable. They weren't reflecting sun on a satellite. It was nothing like that. It was clear that they were not those usual mundane things. Something very unusual and unique. And so I'm thinking, wow, everything all at once. Suddenly another double flash of white light. And then they suddenly broke off to the left. They made a left turn at a right angle, 90-degree turn, and shot off over the roof of the house to my left at such incredible speed. It really was. I've heard other people describe it like this, but this really is the only way to put it. It was like the speed of a bullet out of a gun. It left trace lines, almost like trails of light behind them as they shot off. Absolutely. I jumped out of that chair and ran through the house to the front, the direction they went. Yeah. Wow. WTF, but also amazement at the same time. I ran through thinking, well, at that speed, they're long gone. There was nothing I couldn't see anything out the front, and I could see most of the sky from out of the front of the house. It wasn't blocked in by the tree line as the back of the house is. Front of the house faces southeast, and so I can see, 180 degrees from west to east, and all of that region. And there's nothing out there. There's nothing in the sky to see. I remember leaning up against my car, the boot of my car, and at that point I thought, wow. Well, I'd tell my daughter that I must have seen what she'd seen. Rhiannon, that's the girl's name from next door. I remember her name now. So I pulled out my phone because I didn't have a watch. I pulled out my phone from my coat to check the time, and I know it was 10 or 11 minutes past 4 a.m. At this point, I decided, well, they're long gone at that speed. And so I was, right, I'm done. I'll tell her I've seen them at that time, whatever it is. And I go to come into the house to go to bed. This is where it was life-changing. I come into the front door, close it, turn around, close it, lock it, turn around, go upstairs. And as I put my foot on that footstep, this is where I was very difficult and tricky to put this. There's no easy way to put it. I was struck with a very powerful, clear, concise instruction, which was instantly recognizable as coming not from within my own thoughts, but had come into my own personal mind. I know this sounds crazy, but it was not a voice external to me. It came into my mind and said, not in words, don't close the door, go outside and look up. That's how my mind unraveled it into that language, so to speak. But it was instantaneous and extremely powerful. It stopped me in my tracks because it was so unique again. I've never felt or experienced anything like that before. And the only way I can put it in a nutshell is that it was a telepathic instruction. There's no other way to put it.
Was it a male voice, a female voice?
It wasn't a voice, and that's I've heard other people say that maybe similar things have happened to them, but it was a voice. But I can very, very precisely and categorically say there was no voice. What was so beautiful about it, and it was absolutely incredible, it was so perfect, a perfect communication, that was instantaneous and powerful. The best way I can put it is that my mind translated that instantaneous instruction into the clearest words that I could communicate to someone else. Verb told me to don't close the door, go outside and look up. But that's me putting it into words. But it was so beautiful. And because it was so powerful and so bizarre, it was invasive is not the right word. That sounds negative connotations. It came in from externally into my, your space. It can just do what it wants. Anyway, I turned around without question, out of inquisitiveness, I guess, curiosity, and because it was so overwhelming, I turned around, unlocked the door, opened it, stepped outside and looked up. And it was at that moment, it all happened at once. So this all happened at once, and I have to break it down because there was so much happened at once. As I stepped over the threshold of the door and looked up, that's when this huge object moved out from over the roof of the house. So it's the moment I was on the staircase and I was instructed to go outside, it must have been right over the house, directly above me over the house at that point, because as I stepped out, it moved out and stopped. At the same time that I'm looking up and I'm in shock and awe, at that very moment, I was struck with a number of things. It was like walking into a bath of static electricity. It just felt like the most intense electrical charge in the air. I've never felt anything like that before. And all of the hair on my body stood on end, from top to toe. It sent what felt like waves of tingles all the way up my spine, over my scalp, waves up and down my spine. It felt really nice, to be honest. Beautiful feeling, very powerful. I looked down at my left arm because of the static. All the hair was standing up. I wasn't frightened or anything like that because I was just in absolute shock at that moment. It was the feeling of love, and I know now is quite normal in these circumstances, but at the time this was all new to me. It was like being in an absolute vacuum. There wasn't a single sound. I could hear myself breathing, and that stays with me because I was amazed at how quiet everything had gone, and I could hear myself breathing. The feeling of love was attached with the feeling of being watched, similar to what I know we've talked about in the past with, that kind of paranormal feeling, that feeling of maybe there's something in the room with you. This was take that times 10. It was tangible. It was, you could cut the air with a knife. It was such an overwhelming feeling of being observed and of intimate observation. It felt like, without question, that whatever this thing was, that it knew what I was thinking, that it knew my thoughts, that it knew everything about me. I felt a connection with it, information connection, all of this at once. All of that I became aware of within a second of stepping out over that door and looking up, and it moves over me. It was just everything, vacuum, electricity, feeling of love, put tears in my eyes, and I just jaw dropped. This object was, if you take let's say a big cement truck, it's about the size of that. So I don't know if that's 32 feet long or something. And I know this from what happened later, because it was the same height above the buildings the next day and the next day. It was as if you took a typical two-story house with a roof on top, not a flat roof. This house on top of itself, that's the kind of height it was. So it was about 20 meters high. You're looking at something in the region of 60 to 80 feet up. So it was too close. To describe the object, well, it was absolutely beautiful, majestic, stunning, awesome. The kind of words that are just, there's nothing that can really do it justice. At the time, I said that it was like a horizontal diamond shape. But the only reason I say that is because I had no point of reference. Nothing. I didn't know about UFOs or any of that stuff in my life at that point. I had no idea about all this stuff. No interest, no idea. So the reason I say horizontal diamond shape is because it looked like a solid object that was engulfed in plasma, in a more golden tinge towards the edges, more white in the center, and all around the outside edging, this plasma was it. I say plasma because that's the closest thing I could relate it to. Waves of movement around the outside edging. It had vertical shards, shard of light emanating from the center, above and below it vertically. Even these shards of light were moving. They weren't just static, fixed, like a lens flare. It was really ghostly effect almost. Again, it's not even anything I can say I've seen anything like this before. It was, the light was so intense, it should have burnt my eyes, because
Right.
I've never looked at anything that bright before. But yet, the odd thing is, it was easy on the eyes, gentle to look at. That's what it looked like. I've since seen things which other people have described them as spinning top shape, a good way to put it. And it's the way that that vertical shard of light was emanating from the center, above and below it, that gives it that spinning top effect. That's what it looked like, and it's beautiful.
Did you wave?
I did. Yeah. I mean, it just felt like a natural thing to do. I just automatic response, because I felt like I was being watched, even though it made no sense, because, you know, I couldn't see windows or any people. It just, I felt the overwhelming sense of being observed, of being watched, and of being known, that it just made me feel like I'd be rude if I were not to say hi. So that's literally all I did,
That's
is
funny.
like, hi. So I did that. But at this point, it felt like the phrase awkward silence. I mean, this takes it to, you know, the ultimate level of that. It really did begin to feel awkward, because I didn't know what to say, what to think, what to do. What do I do? What happens now? Suddenly my logical mind kicks in. Instead of being just gobsmacked and shocked, I start to think, what if this is dangerous? I started to think,
Right.
what if I get a discharge, because the static was so strong? I felt like I was starting to get a little bit concerned. I looked to my in front of me, where the neighbors' houses are, and there was just one bedroom light off to the left up ahead. But it felt unusual. It looked unusual. Nothing about this was normal anyway. No sounds, almost like time had slowed down or stopped. Then I realized, maybe I should, no one's going to believe this. What if something happens to me? No one's going to know what's happened. So I start to worry. I look to the door to my right, because I've taken one step to the left off the doorstep. And I realized that I've left the door open, wide open, and I have my daughter and my girlfriend in the house asleep. So I considered, for a flash, the speed of thought. I thought, run upstairs, go wake them up. But no, if I do that, by the time I come down, it will be gone, and then I'll just look like a fool. I didn't want the moment to end as well,
Right.
or to take my eyes off it. So then I thought, what if I just shout into the house, or maybe I should shout out to neighbors? Someone else has to see this. I can't be by myself to see this. No one's going to believe it. I couldn't believe it. And it was, every time I thought about this in those couple of seconds, I felt inappropriate. It felt like beyond me thinking that. It felt like an interruption of my thoughts of, no, that would be inappropriate. Don't do that. I ignored that, because my brain was running away with these thoughts by itself. I then thought about my phone in my top left pocket. I thought, my phone, I could record it, at least a picture, something. The
Mm-hmm.
moment I thought of my phone, the very moment I thought to do that, in my mind, it started to move left. I immediately reacted with, no, 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 I don't go, don't. I didn't want it to end. It was such a beautiful feeling, but it was also, a little bit of fear had crept into that with my logical brain, but I didn't want it to go. So I start walking under it, and within, I'd say, 40 meters or so down the pathway out the front of the houses, the terraced houses, as I start walking, this thing's gliding along beautifully, like a hockey puck on ice, just absolutely perfect. And it starts to speed up, because first of all, I'm directly under it. Then it's very quickly, within a few meters, I'm realizing I've got to jog, and then I've got to run. So it's now speeding up quickly. Curves, quite a sharp curve to the right. So I start to run, and it goes quicker, and it starts to rise up higher as it speeds up. So it's now going off higher and higher, faster and faster. And I've run into the next terraced houses facing me. I know that there's nowhere I can go now. So I stood back, and I watched, keep my eyes on it, to savor every second of this beautiful sight to behold. And this thing just goes off, up and up and up. And I just watched it go so high that it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
When you were running after it, trotting, running, were you saying in your mind, don't leave?
Yeah, I really did feel, I felt like I'd messed it up. I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I'd ruined the moment, because I wanted to make it shallow. into a shallow moment of, oh, let's get a picture because nobody, but it just didn't feel appropriate, just as I felt. And so I came back in the house, and this is where it didn't occur to me at the time, but I have like these almost photographic moments of everything that happened, where it's just like it was just 5 minutes ago. And I come into where I am right now, and I knew that my girlfriend was going to wake up shortly. I came in and I was in absolute shock. And I looked up at the clock. I just happened to glance up at the clock we used to have on this wall in front of me now. And I noted the time was 20 to 5. And I know that when I was out there before I walked in, closed the door, and then went immediately back out with the instruction, it was 11 minutes past 4. Let's say maximum 4:15. So I know 25 minutes, 30 minutes had gone, but the whole thing, there's just no way that it lasted more than a few minutes in chronological order, as far as to me, in the linear order of everything that happened from when I stepped out under it moved down over me, that whole process only seemed to last a couple to a few minutes at best. So somehow time is messed with, and that just doesn't make sense. So
what do you think happened, Max?
I don't have any blank spots, and so what I think is probably just some sort of dilation of some sort, some effect on time from whatever this, for whatever reason, time got a bit messed up. I don't know why. I've heard people say to me since recently that these things are, they can take people and you'd never notice because it seems like there was no blank spots. But all I can tell you is I have no blank spot. It just felt very in time order. Everything felt normal, but clearly something was up with the time that had passed. My girlfriend comes downstairs and I tried to tell her and I just broke down. I couldn't speak, and I've never had that happen to me in my life. I lost the power of speech, and it felt, I can't separate the powerful subjective part of this from the objective. I can tell you what it looked like. A big part of this is what it did, how it felt. It felt like I had that static and all those waves of tingles going up and down my spine when I was stood under it, over my scalp. It felt like my brain was little fireworks going off, and it stayed with me for hours, because when I tried to tell her, I didn't know how to put it into words. I was in complete shock. I stumbled to try and speak. I was in tears. I just was shocked that I was shocked that she had to dash off. She gave me a hug. I went and laid down in bed. I couldn't sleep, of course. The sun came up and I was laying there with these tingles and little electrical fireworks in my head going off. It felt like for a while, and my whole world had just changed. I mean, it literally was a complete life-changing moment. I've had almost 8 years of talking about it now to be able to try to put it into words, but It's been the most difficult journey. The instruction to go outside, it's really, really difficult to communicate how that felt, how that happened into language, because it was instantaneous, perfect, beautiful communication in an instant, perfect form. And it makes you realize how trying to find words in a language with the right choice of words, saying it in the right way, trying to not be misunderstood, miscommunicated. It's a really slow, clumsy way that we communicate with each other. And yet this was perfect. This was instant. This was no miscommunications, no misunderstandings, no time wasting, just instant. And I knew exactly what to do because it told me what to do, whatever it is. This, Kelly Joe, was just the beginning. This was just the beginning of 3.5 years of madness, really. So the next night, begging my girlfriend to stay up with me just in case it comes back, because I don't want to be the only one that experienced this. And I was hoping to God it would come back so that somebody else, that she could see it, and I didn't feel like I'd just lost my mind. She went to bed and said that if you call me, I'll get up and come down. And so I stayed up on purpose now and paced from the back of the house to the front of the house over and over, hoping it would come back. And this night I'd gone to the front at this point of the house. So I've got my front door to my back. My back is to the front door. And all of a sudden, there it is. If I look to my right, I'd say 80, 100 meters away, probably not that far, about 80 meters. And it glides in. The direction of travel was from behind my home to heading south. So it glides in at about the same height that it was over me, over the 3-story, there were some 3-story houses up that way. And it glides in about a story above the top of those houses, so about 4 or 5 stories up. This was maybe 10 minutes later than the night before, because it was about 10 minutes later than it had ended before. I know that it was before 5 a.m., but it was definitely after 4:30. So it comes in, gliding over the tops of the houses where people's bedrooms are. And that's what really affected me. At that point, I thought to myself, wow, these people are all asleep and they don't realize just above their heads is this thing. So I'm looking at it, just again, it absolutely, what's the word? It's hypnotic, because it's so stunning and so beautiful to behold, to look at. I didn't want to take my eyes off it, and it was just being in the moment of just, wow, absolutely wow. So I thought, oh no, I've got to call my girlfriend. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, do I take a video on this old rubbish Nokia from like 2011 or something? I think I had a couple of years old phone at the time. And so I'm considering video or call her. And I chose, I'd rather her be by my side and see this herself. Much more important to me at that moment. That was the choice I made. So I call her and I'm looking, keeping my eye on it. And as it's ringing, it turns left. So it's now going to head from my right-hand side. Remember, my back's to the front door. Heads over to from the right. It turns on a dime, 90-degree turn at a steady, quite a slow speed. And it's heading now from my right across in front of me to my left, heading to my left. And she answers the phone. And I'm like, babe, you've got to come down. It's here. It's come back. Super excited, of course. And she just was too tired. She said, babe, I can't. I'm too tired. I'm like, no. She doesn't get out of bed. So I'm on the phone to her while it just heads up. It just starts to speed up, and it curves around, and it heads up to the same point in the sky that it did the night before on the first night, up in the southeast. Absolutely incredible to look at. Now, it came back, thank God, on the third night. Now, the third night, because of the lack of success with my girlfriend that night, so I said to her, we arranged that if she goes to bed early, I'm going to stay up. This has completely changed my world. There's no way I'm going to bed at this point. I have to know if it's going to come back. I don't know what's going on. Why is it coming back? What is it? All of these questions. I stayed up again. She goes to bed early, and this time got her up because it had come back roughly the same time, about 4 or 5 a.m. She got up, and this time I was in the back garden because I was just going back front, over and over, looking for it, hoping for it to come back. She was making coffee. I remember her stirring the coffee because I was looking straight through the back door. And suddenly, from my left, it comes down from extremely high in the sky. I saw it coming down when it was maybe 150 feet up. I glanced over and saw it as it was heading almost vertically straight down from up above. And it came straight down and stopped. And instantly recognize it. So unique, the light, everything about it. It's just incredible. And I said, it's here. So she runs out, and we both look at it sitting there, roughly the same height over the houses, further away than the night before, a couple of 100 meters away. But it just sits there silently, of course. And we just look at it. She says, wow. It sat for maybe 7 seconds or so, maybe 10 at most. And then the speed it took off at, it just made a V shape from the way it came down, and then took off in the opposite direction.
Were you thinking, hey, it's here for me? Or were you thinking, what's it up to?
I 100%, and even to this day, and of course I could be wrong, but I think I was just in the, whether you want to say the right or the wrong place at the wrong time, the right place at the right time. I think that it was just in the area, and I've got reasons to believe that as well. I was the only person that was up at that stupid time in the morning, that I was in my garden, and it just thought, hey, let's go check him out. I'd like to hold on to that belief. I know it's just it's an assumption, it's a guessing game, and I say that because I now know that there were multiple other people in this area that had seen similar objects, same balls of light, had been captured on dash cam and on photograph by people in this very small vicinity over the last couple of years. So I don't think it was here from me. It just happened to notice me, I think.
You're near an air base?
Yeah, we live just 15 minutes drive away from RAF Wittering. I've only just found out a couple of months ago, say March this year, 2022, a police friend of mine that's helped me to look into my own case. He forwarded me an online newspaper article from a man who lives in a town called Stamford, not far from here, that had been watching a UFO over the airbase. And that article came out in February 2015, just a couple of months after it happened to us here. I contacted that man. I managed to find him. I researched and found him and wrote him a letter. He's 83 years old, Alan Hewitt. And he wrote back to me. He said, the article said that a man had witnessed a UFO over the base one night, but it did not say what he'd told me in the letter. He said that I watched it every night for a week come back over the base. I could talk as you know from before, I don't ever intend to, but there's so much detail that is important. Thank you, Joe.
Have a good evening. Try and stay
You
cool.
too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm going to go out
Take
to
care.
the car and put the aircon on.
All right. We'll try to enjoy your night.
You.
Yeah. Thank you.
Me
Okay.
too.
We'll talk later.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. I would like to keep this cast a commercial-free zone. In light of that, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channels. All my orb videos are available by using the handle @SpiritOrbSightings, or visit my new channel with the handle @Orbicle Times Podcast. If you've already subscribed, many thanks. For blogs, episodes, show notes, bios, images, and video, please visit www.orbicletimes.com. If you enjoyed an episode, then please give a like or a share on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, or whatever podcatcher you happen to use. If you've already done so, much appreciated. Thank you for taking your time to visit these Orbicle Times. Orbicle Times Podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kelly Joe, at Studio Spare Room.